The invisible father, the neurologist, the boy, and the 6-year secret. Before we plunge into this emotional mystery, hit the like button. It helps us keep sharing powerful stories. Subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments, where are you listening from? Your support is the heartbeat of this channel. A diagnosis that stops time. He was a brilliant doctor, accustomed to deciphering the mysteries of the human body. But when he consulted a 6-year-old boy who spoke of an invisible father, something inside him shook. The child's words described intimate details that only he could possess, and when he saw the boy's mother, the ground vanished beneath his feet. It was her, the woman he had loved and lost years ago. But what happened next, no one in that room could have imagined. Dr. Ethan Vance never believed in coincidences. As a neurologist, he was trained to seek patterns, logical connections, and answers that made sense within the complex labyrinth of the human brain. But on that Thursday afternoon, when he opened his office door and saw the little boy sitting next to his mother, something inside him shivered in a way science couldn't explain. The boy was 6, with large, curious eyes, clutching a worn-out teddy bear to his chest. He looked at Ethan with a strangely familiar expression, as if recognizing someone who had always been there, but was never quite tangible. "Hey there, Lucas," Ethan said, kneeling to the boy's height, trying to appear calm despite an inexplicable pressure in his chest. "I'm here to help figure out what's going on, okay?" Lucas nodded slowly, but didn't take his eyes off him. There was something there, a silent intensity, as if this small being knew things no one else did. Ethan turned to greet the mother, and the entire world seemed to stop spinning. Sophia. Her name echoed in his mind like a muffled thunderclap. She was there, sitting opposite him, with the same warm brown eyes he had seen countless times in his dreams and nightmares. Her brown hair fell over her shoulders differently now, shorter, more practical. Her face was lightly etched with fatigue, but it was still the face he had loved with an intensity that had nearly destroyed him. She recognized him too. He saw in her eyes a quick flash of shock, followed by a cold mask she raised like closing a door. "Doctor," she said, her voice controlled, extending her hand politely, almost formally. Ethan gripped her hand, feeling her warm skin against his, and had to restrain himself from pulling her close, from asking where she had been all these years, why she vanished, why she never answered. But he was a professional. He had a patient in front of him. "Pleasure," he replied, letting go of her hand before the touch lingered too long. "Let's talk about Lucas." Sophia quickly averted her gaze, as if that brief contact had burned her. Ethan refocused on the boy, but he felt the weight of her stare on him, as if every one of his movements was being watched, measured, and perhaps feared. "So, Lucas, your mom told me you had a seizure a few days ago. Can you tell me what you felt?" The little boy fidgeted, swinging his legs that didn't reach the floor. "I was playing, and suddenly everything felt weird, like the world turned off." Ethan made notes, but a part of him was connected to the boy in a way that transcended medicine. There was something in his voice, in the way he spoke, that reminded him of himself as a child. "And after you came back, did you remember anything?" Lucas looked at his teddy bear, hugging it tighter. "I saw my dad." Sophia tensed beside him. Ethan noticed, but kept his voice calm. "Your dad was with you?" "No, he's never really there," Lucas replied with a sadness that broke Ethan's heart. "But I know he exists. He's invisible, but I feel him close sometimes." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He exchanged a quick glance with Sophia, who was pale, her lips tight as if holding back a scream. "What is this invisible dad like, Lucas?" Ethan asked, trying to keep his tone light, though something inside him began to tremble. The boy tilted his head, thinking. "He's tall and has a calm voice like yours, and he likes to draw, just like me. Mom says I get that from her, but I think I get it from him. Ethan felt the air catch in his throat. He loved to draw. He always had a sketch pad beside his bed, full of faces, landscapes, things he saw and couldn't forget. And he has a scar, right here. Lucas pointed to his own right shoulder, exactly where Ethan had a distinctive scar from a childhood bicycle accident. The office fell silent. Ethan slowly raised his eyes, meeting Sophia's gaze. Her eyes were tear-filled, her hands intertwined so tightly her knuckles were white. She knew. She had always known. And in that moment, Ethan understood. The little boy wasn't making up stories. He was describing someone he had never seen, but who, in some impossible way, he knew. He was describing Ethan, and if Lucas was her son, and if everything he was saying was true, Ethan felt the world simultaneously collapse and rebuild. He had a son, and that son had spent 6 years of his life believing his father was invisible. Ethan and Sophia's breakup clearly involved a massive misunderstanding. Who do you think is primarily to blame for the 6 years of silence? Share your thoughts below. Don't let this story fade. Give this video a thumbs up and hit subscribe to support our channel. The 6-year silence, a truth revealed. The following days were a silent torment. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Lucas, his words, the unsettlingly accurate description of details a 6-year-old boy shouldn't know. And, primarily, he couldn't stop thinking about Sophia. The way she avoided his gaze when Lucas mentioned the invisible father, the tension that ran through her body, the urgency with which she left the office as soon as the consultation was over. He asked them to return in 3 days for further tests. She simply nodded, without looking at him, and led Lucas away with an urgency that seemed to say, "I need to get out of here, before everything falls apart." But Ethan wasn't going to let it go. Not this time. He spent 2 nights barely sleeping, churning up memories he had locked away in a dark corner of his mind. The humanitarian mission in East Africa, 7 years ago. 3 intense months in a small village where medicine was scarce and hope even more so. And Sophia was there, a volunteer doctor like him, full of determination and sweetness. They fell in love amidst the chaos. Between exhausting shifts, sleepless nights, and the constant feeling that they were doing something bigger than themselves. He remembered her smile, illuminated by the weak light of a kerosene lamp, their whispered conversations under the starry African sky, the kiss that sealed something between them that felt eternal. And then, she vanished. She returned home before him, saying she had a family emergency. She promised to call, write, and keep in touch. But she never answered again. Ethan tried. God, how he tried. Messages, calls, emails, all unanswered. Until he gave up, heartbroken, and with the bitter feeling that he had only been a fleeting passion for her. But now, seeing her face again, noticing the fear in her eyes, he knew there was something much bigger behind that silence. On the morning of the follow-up appointment, Ethan arrived at the hospital early. He reviewed Lucas's file 3 times, though he already knew every word by heart. When the office door opened and Sophia entered with the boy, he felt the same impact as before, as if her presence filled every available space. "Good morning," she said, her voice controlled, but he caught the slight tremor. "Good morning, Sophia. Good morning, Lucas." The little boy smiled at him, a wide, genuine smile that made Ethan's chest ache. "Hi, doctor. I brought you a drawing." Lucas held out a crumpled paper. Ethan took it carefully, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. It was a simple drawing, done with crayons. 3 figures holding hands, a woman, a child, and a tall man. "Who are they?" Ethan asked, though he already knew the answer. "That's me, my mom, and my invisible dad." Sophia closed her eyes for an instant, taking a deep breath. Ethan carefully put the drawing away and conducted the routine neurological tests. Lucas was cooperative, curious. He asked endless questions about everything. And with every passing minute, Ethan saw more of himself in that boy. The way he tilted his head when thinking, the habit of biting his lower lip when concentrating, the way his eyes lit up when he spoke of something he loved. How hadn't he seen it before? When the exam was finished, Ethan asked the nurse to take Lucas to the playroom next door while he discussed the results with the mother. Sophia hesitated, but eventually agreed. As soon as they were alone, the air in the office thickened. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk, his eyes fixed on her. "Sophia, we need to talk. About the exams, yes," she replied too quickly, avoiding his gaze. "No, about us." She flinched. "There is no us, doctor. There is only my son and the treatment he needs." "Your son," Ethan repeated slowly, letting the weight of the word hang between them. "Sophia, look at me." She didn't. "Please," he insisted, his voice gentle. Finally, she raised her eyes, and Ethan saw everything there. Fear, guilt, pain, and something that looked a lot like longing. "How old is Lucas?" "6, she replied, her voice barely audible. "And when did you find out you were pregnant?" She looked away again, her hands clasped in her lap. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me," Ethan said, his voice firm but not aggressive. "Sophia, I'm not an idiot. He's 6 years old. We saw each other 7 years ago. He talks about details about me that he couldn't possibly know. He draws a father who—" "Stop!" She cut him off, standing up abruptly, the tears finally overflowing. "Just stop!" Ethan also stood, moving around the desk, but keeping his distance so as not to scare her. "I don't want to pressure you, but I have a right to know the truth." "A right?" she repeated with a bitter laugh. "You vanished, Ethan. I tried to talk to you and you never answered. You simply disappeared from my life, as if nothing we lived meant anything." The pain in her voice hit him like a punch. "I vanished. Sophia, you disappeared. I called you, texted you, emailed you. You blocked me on everything. I tried to find you and you were gone. You moved countries, left social media. No one knew where you were." They stared at each other, breathless, and Ethan felt the world spinning backward. "What are you talking about? I never—" And then he remembered. The accident. 3 months after returning from Africa, he suffered a severe car accident. He spent weeks hospitalized, months in recovery. He had to travel to the Mayo Clinic for intensive rehabilitation treatment. During that period, he was so physically and emotionally broken that he could barely care for himself. He asked his family not to tell anyone. He didn't want anyone to see him in that state. And if she had tried to contact him during that period, "My God," he whispered, running a hand over his face. "Sophia, I was in an accident. I was out of contact for months, trying to recover. I thought you had given up on me, that you had moved on. She covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide. You were hurt? Seriously?" "I was. Seriously." The silence that fell between them was heavy with everything that had been lost. Misunderstandings and silences that cost years. "I was pregnant," Sophia confessed, her voice breaking. "I found out right after I got back. I tried to tell you, but you didn't answer. And when I finally got information, they said you had left the country, that no one knew when you would return. I was alone, Ethan, terrified, and I couldn't wait for someone who might never come back." Ethan felt his chest tighten. He stepped forward, and without thinking, held her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "Is he my son?" It wasn't a question. It was a certainty. Sophia closed her eyes, and tears streamed onto his hands. "Yes," she whispered. "He is yours." And then Ethan pulled her into a tight, desperate embrace, as if he were holding everything he had lost and just found. She clung to him, sobbing against his chest, and they remained that way, 2 broken hearts trying to fit together again after so long apart. On the other side of the door, Lucas waited, and the invisible father was finally starting to become real. You You think Ethan and Sophia's shared heartbreak and the mutual misunderstanding can be fully healed? Or will the 6 lost years always cast a shadow on their potential future? Comment your prediction. The unstoppable connection. A paternal instinct. The following days were strange, yet strangely natural. Ethan couldn't just announce he had discovered a son. There were protocols, legal issues, and above all, there was Lucas, a child who needed to be shielded from emotional turmoil while dealing with his seizures. But Ethan also couldn't stay away. He began showing up at the hospital more often, always with a professional excuse. Checking Lucas's tests, monitoring his progress, adjusting medication. Sophia knew he was inventing reasons to be near, but she didn't stop him. Perhaps because, deep down, she needed it too. And Lucas? Lucas simply flourished in Ethan's presence. It was inexplicable. The boy, usually shy with strangers, opened up completely when the doctor was around. He laughed more. He spoke more. He asked endless questions about everything. The human body, the stars, why the sky was blue. And Ethan answered every question with infinite patience, as if every word exchanged with the little boy was a piece of lost time he was reclaiming. One afternoon, Ethan found Lucas drawing in the consultation waiting room, while Sophia talked to the receptionist about scheduling. He approached slowly and sat down beside the boy. "Can I see?" Lucas proudly held up the drawing. It was a colorful rocket, with orange and yellow flames shooting from the base. "When I grow up, I'm going to be an astronaut," Lucas declared, with the absolute conviction only a 6-year-old could possess. Ethan smiled, feeling something warm expand in his chest. "An astronaut, huh? That's a great choice. And you? What did you want to be when you were little?" Ethan paused. "I wanted to be a doctor and an artist. I couldn't decide between the two, so I became a doctor who sketches in his spare time." Lucas's eyes lit up. "You draw?" "Draw? Really?" "Really. My mom draws too. She makes beautiful drawings of flowers and birds, but she doesn't do it much anymore. Says she doesn't have time." Ethan looked at Sophia across the room. She had her back to him, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she held her phone too tightly. She always drew. He remembered the nights in Africa when she would grab an old notebook and make quick sketches of the village children, the tired faces of the other doctors, the arid landscapes under the sunset. She said drawing helped her process everything she saw, everything she felt. "You know what I think?" Ethan said, turning his attention back to Lucas. "I think you got talent from both sides." Lucas tilted his head, curious. "Both sides?" Ethan realized the slip too late. He cleared his throat. "From your mom and, well, whoever taught you to love art." Lucas suddenly grew serious, lowering the drawing. "My invisible dad likes to draw too. I know it." "How do you know?" The boy shrugged, as if the answer were obvious. "I just know. The same way I know he has eyes just like mine, and that he would want to be here, but he can't." Ethan's throat tightened. He placed his hand on the boy's shoulder, feeling the smallness and fragility of that body, and at the same time, the immense strength that Hart carried. "What if he could, Lucas? If he could be here, would you like that?" Lucas raised his eyes, so much like his own that Ethan felt a shiver. "I would love it, but Mom gets sad when I talk about him, so I don't talk about him much anymore." At that moment, Sophia returned and saw the two of them together. She stopped in mid-stride, as if struck by something invisible. The scene before her, Ethan sitting next to Lucas, their heads bent over the drawing, his large hand resting on the boy's small shoulder, was something she had imagined 1,000 times over the past 6 years, but never thought she would actually see. Ethan looked up and met her gaze. For an instant, the world around them disappeared. There was only that suspended moment, father and son together, and her watching, feeling her chest tighten with a mix of relief and terror. Because if she allowed this to continue, if she truly let Ethan into Lucas's life, into their lives, there would be no going back. And she was afraid of getting hurt again, afraid of Lucas getting hurt, afraid that Ethan would discover that being a father was too difficult and would give up, leaving the boy even more broken than before. But at the same time, how could she deny her son the presence of the father he so desperately desired? Sophia is facing an agonizing choice: protect her heart by keeping Ethan away, or risk everything for Lucas's happiness and the family they could. What advice would you give her right now? Don't miss what happens next. Hit subscribe and share this emotional journey with a friend. The confession and the broken kiss, the dinner was surprisingly light. Lucas chattered non-stop about school, friends, and a science project he was doing on planets. Ethan listened with genuine attention, asking questions, laughing at the jokes, and Sophia watched the two of them with a mix of joy and heartache. When Lucas finally went to bed, exhausted and happy, Sophia and Ethan were left alone in the living room, enveloped in a silence heavy with unbroken words. "Coffee?" she offered. "Please." She served 2 cups and sat on the sofa, maintaining a safe distance. Ethan accepted the cup but didn't drink. He just held it between his hands, as if needing something to anchor him. "Sophia," he began, his voice low but firm. "We need to talk about all of this. For real." She nodded, her eyes fixed on the cup. "I know. Lucas is my son," he said, without preamble. "And I'm not saying that to pressure you or scare you. I'm saying it because it's the truth, and because I have the right to know, officially, completely." Sophia bit her lip, fighting back tears. "You're right. He is yours." The confirmation, though expected, hit Ethan with devastating force. He closed his eyes, breathing so deeply. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you let me be out of his life all these years?" His voice wasn't accusatory. It was just broken. Sophia looked up, tears finally falling. "Because I tried, Ethan. I swear I tried. When I found out I was pregnant, you had just returned from Africa. I called your number. Nothing. I messaged you. Nothing. I tried to find you on social media, but you had vanished from everything. I asked mutual friends, and they said you had left the country, that you were going through something difficult, but no one knew what. I was terrified, Ethan. I was 26, starting my career, and suddenly I was pregnant by a man who had disappeared without a trace. I waited months, but you didn't come back, and I needed to move on. I needed to take care of the baby growing inside me." Ethan felt his stomach sink. "The accident. I was in a hospital in the States. I was hospitalized for 3 months after the crash. I went through surgeries, physical therapy. I was so broken, I asked my family not to tell anyone. I didn't want people to see me that way." He turned to her, his eyes red. "And all that time, I thought you had abandoned me, that you had given up on me. I loved you, Sophia, and you just disappeared." "I loved you too," she shouted back, standing up. "I never stopped loving you. But what was I supposed to do? Wait forever for someone who might never return? Raise our son alone, telling him that his father existed. But we didn't know where he was?" They were face to face now, breathless, with years of pain and misunderstanding between them. "You should have tried harder," Ethan said, but his voice cracked. "And so should you," Sophia replied, tears falling freely. "We both messed up, Ethan. Both of us. We let pride, fear, and silence destroy everything." The silence that fell was heavy and suffocating. Then, slowly, Ethan stepped forward and held her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "He's 6 years old, Sophia. 6 years that I lost. 6 birthdays. 6 first times. And I can't get that back. But I can be here now. I need to be here now." She nodded, able to speak. "I want to know my son," he continued, his voice firm despite the tears. "I want to be his father. For real. Not like a doctor who pops in now and then, but as the father he deserves to have. What if he doesn't accept you? Sophia whispered. What if it's too late? Ethan brushed his thumbs over the tears on her face with a gesture so intimate and familiar that it made her heart ache. Then I'll win him over, day after day, until he knows that the invisible father doesn't have to be invisible anymore. Sophia closed her eyes, and Ethan pulled her into a desperate embrace. She clung to him as if she were drowning, and he was the only solid thing in the world. They stayed that way for long minutes, crying together, holding each other, trying to heal wounds that had been bleeding for years. When they finally separated, they both knew nothing would be easy. There was a long conversation ahead, difficult decisions, painful adjustments. But for the first time in 6 years, Sophia wasn't alone. And Ethan, finally, had the chance to be the father he always should have been. The invisible father becomes real. A first promise. The weeks that followed were like learning to walk again. Ethan began integrating into Lucas's routine gradually. First, it was just occasional dinners. Then, weekend park trips. Soon, he was present at doctor appointments, school meetings, and even in small daily moments, like helping with homework or reading a bedtime story. Lucas flourished in his presence. The boy, who used to be quiet and a little withdrawn, now laughed louder, talked more, and dreamed bigger. And although he still called Ethan doctor, there was a growing closeness between them that anyone with eyes could see. The seizures continued. They were unpredictable, terrifying. And every time they happened, Sophia felt terror grip her chest like an iron hand. Ethan adjusted medications, ordered new tests, consulted specialized colleagues, but the root cause remained a mystery, and the fear of losing Lucas hung over them like a constant shadow. It was a Thursday evening when the next seizure occurred. Lucas was playing on the living room floor, assembling a dinosaur puzzle, when he suddenly stopped. His eyes glazed over, his body stiffened, and he fell to his side. "Lucas!" Sophia screamed, dropping the dishes she was washing and rushing to him. She knew what to do. Turn the boy on his side. Protect his head. Time the duration of the seizure. But knowing didn't make the experience any less terrifying. She held her son's hand, whispering words of comfort he probably couldn't hear, as tears streamed down her face. The seizure lasted almost 2 minutes, longer than usual. When it finally passed, Lucas lay unconscious, breathing heavily. Sophia grabbed the phone with trembling hands and called Ethan. He answered on the second ring. "Sophia, he had another seizure," she said, her voice breaking. "It was long, Ethan. Very long. I'm coming. Don't hang up." Ethan arrived in less than 15 minutes with the emergency medical kit he now kept in his car. He found Sophia sitting on the floor, with Lucas resting on her lap, still sleepy and confused. "Hi, champ," Ethan said softly, kneeling beside them. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," Lucas murmured. "My head hurts." Ethan checked the boy's vitals, examined his pupils, and asked simple questions to assess his consciousness. Everything indicated the seizure had passed, but the duration was worrying. "We're taking him to the hospital, just to make sure everything is okay." Sophia nodded, too pale and shaky to speak. Ethan helped her lift Lucas and drove them. All the way to the hospital, he held Sophia's hand while driving, squeezing gently whenever he felt her fingers tremble. "He's going to be okay," Ethan repeated like a mantra. "I promise, Sophia, he's going to be okay." But for the first time, he wasn't sure if he was saying it to calm her or himself. At the hospital, Lucas was admitted for observation. Ethan used all his influence to ensure the boy stayed in a private room with the best monitoring equipment available. Sophia didn't leave her son's side for a second. Ethan entered after reviewing the tests for the 3rd time. He saw Sophia there, her head bowed, Her shoulders slumped with a weight of exhaustion that went far beyond the physical. "Sophia," he called softly. She looked up, and Ethan saw the absolute terror in her eyes. "What if I lose him, Ethan? What if the next seizure is worse and I can't save him?" He approached, pulling up a chair to sit beside her. "You're not going to lose him. We're not going to lose him." "You can't promise that," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You're a doctor. You know you can't." Ethan took her hands in his, forcing her to look at him. "You're right. I can't promise that nothing bad will happen. But I can promise that I will do everything, absolutely everything in my power to care for him, to protect him, and that you will never go through this alone again." The tears Sophia had held back for hours finally burst forth. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing, and Ethan pulled her into a tight embrace. "I'm so tired," she confessed against his chest. "So tired of being afraid, of carrying everything alone, of pretending to be strong when I'm falling apart inside." "You are the strongest woman I know," Ethan said, kissing the top of her head. "But strength doesn't mean doing everything alone. Let me help, please." She nodded against his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat, the familiar scent that reminded her of simpler times, when they believed nothing could separate them. They stayed like that for long minutes, until her breathing calmed and the trembling stopped. When she finally pulled away, wiping her tears, Ethan realized how close she was. So close he could see the small gold flecks in her brown eyes. So close that if he leaned just a few inches, he could... His eyes dropped to her lips, and Sophia noticed. She saw the desire in his eyes, felt the tension in the air shift, becoming denser, more electric. She should have pulled away. She should have created distance, but she couldn't. Ethan slowly raised his hand, touching her face with an almost painful delicacy. His thumb traced the line of her jaw, moved down to her chin, and gently lifted her face. "Sophia," he whispered, her name sounding like a prayer. She closed her eyes, her heart racing. And then he leaned in, closing the distance between them. So slowly it felt like torture, as inevitable as gravity. Their lips were inches from touching when the door burst open. "Dr. Vance, sorry to interrupt," the nurse said, entering with a clipboard. "But I need you to sign the authorization for the new test." Ethan and Sophia jumped apart like teenagers caught doing something wrong. "Right," Ethan said, his voice hoarser than normal. "I'll be right there." The nurse handed him the clipboard, shot a quick glance between the two, and discreetly left. The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia stood up, smoothing her hair with trembling hands. I need coffee." "Do you want anything?" "Sophia." "Coffee, Ethan." "Yes or no?" he sighed, recognizing the escape strategy when he saw one. "Yes. Thank you." She left quickly, and Ethan was left alone with Lucas, who continued to sleep peacefully, oblivious to the emotional storm raging around him. He ran a hand over his face, trying to organize his thoughts. He wanted Sophia, wanted to kiss her, embrace her, erase the years of separation and pain. But he also knew they needed to take it slow, that there was a child involved, that things were complicated. But God, how hard it was to go slow when everything in him screamed to pull her back and finish what they had started. The invisible father no more. A family made real. The hospital morning was silent, punctuated only by the distant sounds of carts rolling down the corridors and the rhythmic beep of the monitors. Ethan had insisted that Sophia rest a little, promising he would keep watch beside Lucas. She had resisted at first, but physical and emotional exhaustion finally won. Ethan watched the two of them, mother and son, and felt his chest tighten with a mix of love and remorse, so intense it almost physically hurt. 6 years. He had lost 6 years of that boy's life. 6 years of Sophia raising him alone, dealing with the fear, the seizures, the sleepless nights. At 3 in the morning, Lucas began to stir restlessly. Ethan immediately stood up, checking the monitors. Everything seemed normal. But there was something in the way the boy writhed, in the small groans he emitted, that set off an alarm in the doctor's head. The next seizure came. It was long, requiring immediate medical intervention. Ethan was no longer just the doctor trying to save a patient. He was the father fighting for his son. The man trying to protect the family he almost lost. "He's going to be okay," Ethan promised Sophia, holding her tight, his voice thick with tears. "You won't lose him. We will figure out what is causing this and we will solve it. I promise." When dawn finally arrived, painting the sky orange through the hospital window, Lucas began to wake up. His eyes searched automatically for his mother. "Mommy?" His voice was weak. "I'm here, love," Sophia said immediately, taking his hand. "I'm here." Then Lucas turned his head and saw Ethan on the other side of the bed. A small, tired smile appeared on his face. "Dr. Vance is here too." "I am," Ethan confirmed, gently touching the boy's forehead. "How are you feeling, champ?" "Tired and hungry." Sophia and Ethan exchanged a relieved glance. "That's a good sign," Ethan said. Lucas nodded, but continued looking at Ethan with a thoughtful expression. "Dr. Vance, you stayed all night?" "I did. I wanted to make sure you were okay. My invisible dad would stay too," he said softly. "If he could." Ethan's throat tightened. Sophia bit her lip, tears returning. And then, gathering all the courage she had, Sophia leaned in and kissed Lucas's forehead. "Love," she began, her voice trembling. "There's something Mommy needs to tell you." Lucas looked at her, curious. Sophia looked at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. "Your invisible dad," she continued, taking a deep breath. "He doesn't have to be invisible. Not anymore. Because he's right here." Lucas frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Sophia took Ethan's hand and placed it on top of Lucas's, uniting the three. "Lucas, Dr. Vance is your father. Your real dad." The silence was absolute. Lucas looked at Ethan's large hand over his small one. He looked at Ethan's face. Then he looked at Sophia, seeking confirmation. "Really?" he whispered. "Really?" Ethan said, his voice husky. "I am your dad, Lucas. I always was. It just took me a long time to get to you, and I'm so sorry for that." Lucas's eyes filled with tears, but he was smiling. "I knew it," he said, squeezing Ethan's hand. "I always knew you existed. The invisible father was you." And then, with the surprising strength of a 6-year-old, Lucas pulled Ethan into a hug. Ethan hugged him back, closing his eyes, feeling the tears finally fall. "I love you, son," he whispered. "I love you so much." "I love you too, Dad." And in that hospital room, under the soft morning light, a family that had been separated by fate, finally reunited. No longer invisible. Finally real. The secret is out, and the family is reunited. What kind of challenges do you think Ethan and Sophia will face now that they are officially co-parenting? Do you think they will get back together romantically? Share your thoughts below.